Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to That Sounds Risky. I am your host, Sara Emmerson, and I am so excited today to be here with Annie Aiello. And today's guest, Annie, is the founder of Always Olivia. And this conversation is about what happens when something deeply personal becomes something you feel called to do something with. Because sometimes the biggest risks we take aren't just ones that are about starting a business or starting a career or making a bold move. Sometimes the risks are about sharing our story and about creating something that has such deep meaning to us. And that's what Annie is going to be talking to us about today. And Annie, I'm so grateful to have you with us. Welcome.
Great to be here, Sarah.
Yes. Well, Annie and I go way back. We've known each other for many years. And so that's why this conversation is really special to me in many ways. But today we're going to be talking about her story, and not just about what she's creating currently in her life, but about the risks that she's taken both personally and professionally. So Annie, introduce yourself to everyone and let them know what Always Olivia is.
Yeah. So I'm Annie Aiello. I am born and raised in the Chicagoland area, suburbs of Chicago. Grew up in a very large Italian-Irish family, and we all have our own sort of unique gifts. And one of the things I was gifted with very early on was this ability to sing. And if I really think about it, Sarah, I mean, I go back way, way, way young. Way young. And so it was interesting. They say, I think someone says out there that when you're like 7 years old, if you look at the things that you do when you're little, oftentimes those are the things you come back to. And if I think about that, I think about literally with my cousins, I think one of whom
Yeah.
we were performing, we were doing shows, we were doing, singing to the vinyl records, and we were busting through my French doors at my home and performing for my grandma and her two sisters, my two like great aunts. And
your first audience. I love it.
It was really, I mean, they were asking us to sing and dance and the whole nine yards. So I guess it goes all the way back to to those days when I was little.
Yeah.
So
And
Always Olivia. Yeah. So to fast forward, my father brought home, he was very much into music. He was not a musician or anything like that. We didn't even have any kind of instrument in our home. I was pleading with my parents, but again, youngest of six, budgets were thin. But we did listen to a lot of music. And my father brought home Have You Never Been Mellow? Depending on how old you are as a listener, you may or may not know that album, but it was a 1970s album by Olivia Newton-John. And I was listening to people like, Lionel Richie, Gladys Knight, Barbra Streisand, Kenny Rogers, the Eagles, Beatles, all of these, classics, right?
Yeah.
And so my father brought this album home, and I picked up my Donnie and Marie album. I put it to the side, and I ended up listening to Olivia, and I never looked back. She was just someone that from a young age influenced my voice. And I didn't know how great of an influence she had on me at that age. But as I got older and I ended up singing in high school, I ended up singing a bit in college, and then even post-college, I sang at my church and got really involved there. And, it just was always a thread in my life. And so that's sort of the foundation of starting this tribute show to Olivia Newton-John. Tribute bands are a big thing now. And Olivia Newton-John passed 4 years ago, August 8th. And so literally as she was sick, I had this inclination, just a sort of a nudging to try and start a tribute show.
Wow.
And my thought was, well, the person I know best, the person I know all the music inside and out, wouldn't need any help or support to remember these lyrics, was Olivia. And that's how it got started. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, one of the things I love about having these conversations is hearing the risks that people have taken. And we're going to get to hear more about your risk of just starting this and the dream of this with Always Olivia. And I'm so proud of you. Like, as I've seen your work and as I've heard just so many wonderful things about the show, and have heard you sing. Obviously, have an incredible talent. I've heard you over the years. It's so encouraging to see what you've done with that now. But outside of Always Olivia, you've been somebody that's taken risks in multiple areas. You just talked about that growing up too. So tell us a little bit about your who you are outside of Always Olivia, so that we know the person that's showing up taking these risks when it comes to the show.
So, what's really interesting, and as I was sort of prepping for this show, I was thinking about how actually I grew up in a pretty risk-averse family. So academics and athletics was something that was strongly influenced in my home. My family, we are first generation Italian Americans. My father was first generation, so I'm second generation. And academics. My Uncle Ross came from Italy. He was the first educated. This is my dad's uncle, so my great uncle came from Italy, had no education, was the first one to be educated in the United States, and he was a runner, and he was a track and fielder, got a scholarship to Grinnell College in Iowa, and set the stage for the rest of the family. My aunt ended up becoming a doctor and a nun at 40.
Wow.
And
talk about taking some risks.
Oh, going on. Exactly. I mean, ended up going on. So education, my grandfather was a pharmacist. So very bright, very intelligent people in my family. And so this was passed down through my father and my mother. My mom was absolutely probably smarter than my dad. So, but she ended up being a homemaker and wasn't really there to able to exercise those things. But it was always very heavily influenced. So I was the youngest of doctors, attorneys, Northwestern business entrepreneur grads, and I found myself in this system that is something to be celebrated, and also a little bit out of place because I was this artist and I didn't quite know how how do you achieve excellence in art other than literally like practicing art or becoming an artist or, and so education was something that was always emphasized. And I ended up, going to college and I got a business degree, and I always chose the creative side of those things, but I stayed really fairly in the box. I was pretty conservative, but all the while, literally on my college campus, I was passing by the art department, and I was an art minor because that was safe. And I chose the safe route in so many ways. And, in hindsight, I think there was a lot of benefit to that to some degree, but I had to get stronger in terms of learning how to take risks. So, but I'd walk across the campus and I'd be going into my economics and stats classes, and I just absolutely wanted to stick a fork in my eye. And I was with these amazing, creatives in my minor program, and literally doing fine art and studying all, film history and lots of outside the box things. And it was just so foreign to me. I didn't know what to do with it. And so I graduated and ended up working in an ad agency, and it was, certainly creative enough and fun, and it was feeding a part of my heart and my creative senses. But I wanted something more, and I think where the risk taking started was starting to pay attention to that inner voice inside of me, whether it be spirit or, however someone might interpret that, but to really listen to that still small voice that was guiding me to a path that I think really truly was suited for me, rather than what my parents thought I should do. My dad wanted me to be an attorney, and I knew that wasn't my path. I just knew it. So what I paid attention to was, okay, I'm in the creative realm, but there's something more. I need something that has meaning, something that is not just promoting, a widget or promoting a service. I need something more. And so I went back and I got my MBA, and I got it in marketing, and did really well in my program. And I ended up working for
And that in and of itself, though, Annie, too, is a risk, right?
Oh,
Identifying, I want more. I know there's a lot of people that message me or that are listening here even today that know, hey, where I am now, I'm not at my full potential. I'm not using all that I could, or I don't feel fully fulfilled. And I just even having that thought and taking action towards it, you didn't know what the final
but
and
I
I
did.
don't ever think we're
Yeah.
final. There's no final, but you didn't know what the 10th iteration of that would be. But it took bravery and willingness to identify there's more for you to even go back for the MBA.
Well, it did because, they say you shouldn't really compare, but, when you're in a family of 6 children, um, my eldest brother, he just he knew what he wanted to do when he was 10,
Mm,
and I think I vacillated a bit on that because of the art creative side of me. It was just a little bit less clear. It was a little bit more
yeah.
nebulous. And so, I remember my brother coming to my ad agency to kind of check out where I was working one day, and I was just a little uncertain. There was a tentativeness about it, and I think, I always was. I almost underplayed it, like, yeah, I'm creative, but at some point that turned, and I'll try to put words to that. So, knew that there was something that inside of me that needed to have something beyond myself, something that was a bit more. I guess existential,
Yeah.
and so I went back, got this MBA to your point, because I didn't know if pursuing business was really the path to that or not, but it was really, again, all I knew. It was the system I was in, and it was encouraged. And so, that was an accomplishment in and of itself, where I graduated with honors from my MBA, and went to work for the Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago. Now it's called Ann Lurie's, but
Yeah.
it was absolutely the right place for me for quite some time. I was able to really exercise the creative side of me. I was able to interview people and understand how medicine, there was this intellectual side of things, but I also was able to, produce a telethon at, 25 years old. I was able to, write things and write articles that were really, really interesting and fun and creative, and produce videos and things. So all that to say is, then I got, pulled into uh, a ministry setting, and that was really right at home. It was really aligning my music passion, my passion for music, and my passion for something meaningful, in this case ministry, and it really aligned with me. And it's pretty much where I've stayed in terms of my career paths until um, I had to come to kind of a crossroads with some personal things. I had gotten married, met my husband at my church. Um, and we were married for 23 years. We have 2 beautiful children, and there was a lot of up and down in our marriage, a lot of difficulty. And, I grew up in a home that ended up, my parents divorced as well. And so it was one of those things where I absolutely had promised myself I was never gonna
Mm,
be divorced. And, so here I was, 23 years later, fully entrenched in ministry and in music, and um, felt a ton of shame,
mm,
realizing that, wow, my marriage might be coming to an end as a result of just a lot of dysfunction, dishonesty, and um, yeah, just a lot of hiding. And so I had to make a really, really difficult decision, one that I was principally somewhat just completely averse to. I didn't
mm.
know how, I didn't have a category for that. And so
Yeah.
talk about risk. I don't advocate for divorce. In this instance, it was one of the things that I had to really come to terms with, even though I was principally against it.
Mhm.
I sought counsel from spiritual counsel, advisement, all of that. And it was just one of those situations where, when there's lack of trust and there's deceit and betrayal, um, it just was irreversible at that point. And so I
Mhm.
had to make the very difficult decision to move out of a very toxic situation, and begin to potentially face a life living my own as a single mom, trying to get my kids, who were teenagers at this point, prepped and ready for college. And I didn't know how I was going to do it on a ministry salary. I thought, oh no, how am I going to do this? And I have a degree. I have a degree I can fall back on. I have an MBA. I'm a bright woman, but wow, this is tough. This is a really huge risk for me. But at some, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you go back to that moment, on paper, it feels like insurmountable risks all at once, right? If you're looking at the situation and you're going, I'm sure people listening to this even now are could be going through something similar, where it feels like, hey, on paper, this shouldn't work out the way that I'm hoping, because it feels so big. What were the things in that moment that gave you the belief or the support to be able to take that risk and to keep moving through it?
It's a great question. Honestly, I was, first of all, I faced fear. So again, I was risk averse. I grew up in that system. And this came to a crossroads. I think this is where, when you go through something as difficult as this and you have to take necessary steps forward, you have fear, and yet you need to proceed anyway. So it did take courage, because I think there's a lot of people that are in broken marriages that are still married, and either they have to take the road to try to heal and repair, or they recognize that it's just not recessible, and so therefore there has to be some harder discussions. But in this instance, I mean, I think what allowed me to take that step forward was, one, my faith, just really seeking wise counsel and understanding that there was grace and mercy. To my family, a huge supportive system of my brothers and my sister and my mother and father, who really were there to help support me. My dear friends, really close friendships that reminded me who I am, and said, this is what we know true of you. People that have been friends of mine for years and years, decades, that reminded me that this is who you are. And if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have had the courage to take a step forward. And also my children, my kids saw that this was not working. And so, as hard as it was, and I'm not an advocate for divorce, but I think at some point you have to move forward in order to bring healing. It's like when you have, an infection, you have to clean it out, and it hurts, but it will make way for healing.
Yeah. Well, and I think you made such a good point, because some reconciliation doesn't always look like the bow that we make it. You had to reconcile with you just said it, wanting healing and hope for a healthy way forward for you and for your kids. And so it sounds like you did that. But one of the important things that I think, I mean, I don't know what everyone on this podcast believes, but for me, and I know for you too, faith is a big part of it. But I truly believe the devil wants to steal, rob, and destroy our thoughts often, right? And so he uses isolation when we're in moments of needing to take a risk or needing to step out of traumatic situations. And you had to take the risk to not isolate, to invite people in. You've just named that multiple times, that it was your family, your friends, your community that you had to reach out to. That's risky, to admit, hey, I'm hurting and I need help. Talk to me about how the risk of inclusion and helping, or how that risk of inclusion helped you gain the belief you needed to step forward in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I was the person on the block that had the small group of women at my house and talked about faith and things like that. So there was a lot of shame that I had to recognize. Wow, the minute I go public with this, I'm that family. I'm the family that goes to church that just broke up.
Mm.
And I'm that family that's walking into church that, our faith says, uh, not necessarily the best decision to make. However, it was such a difficult situation that we were in with betrayal and deceit that it was necessary to heal. And so I had the strength to do it only by, again, I think just the strength of people that were around me. I think when you surround yourself with strong people, they tend to lift you up and carry you when you need them to.
Yeah.
And even just telling some of my closest dear friends, uh, it was, there was shame to it, but they quickly allowed me to recognize that that didn't need to stay there very long, that
Mm.
I had my reasons. Was I perfect? No. um did I learn from things, and am I learning from things? Absolutely. What things I would do differently. But when you have a community of strength around you, and they can walk forward with you, holding your hands, holding your arms, reminding you, mirroring back to who you are, that's what gave me the strength. And there was also, and this is kind of the next risk, which is I knew that my children were my focus. My children were my priority. There was not anything else that was distracting me. I was laser focused.
Yeah.
It was provide for my children, provide for myself, help my mom, and, keep moving. And so I left ministry for a time, and I went back into the marketplace, and I doubled my salary, and I was making more money than I ever have in my whole life, and I was more miserable than anything. Now, granted, it was a hard time, but it was not anything enjoyable to my heart, right? So
Yeah.
the places that I knew that I was being fulfilled, it was that more thing that I was seeking early on in my career. I had to give that up for a time to just get myself back on track
Yeah.
financially, just after this divorce. So my children were my focus. And that's when I stepped into, well, just taking that risk of going back to marketplace was a lot. But then COVID hit,
Yeah.
and I'm working remotely
Wow.
full time, and, all of these things. And I needed a positive outlet. I needed something to bring joy in my life. And that was honestly the spark that got me thinking. And so I went to an Olivia Newton-John concert. She was touring back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
She had cancer and had announced that she had cancer for the third time. My best friend from grade school and I were dear. We loved Olivia Newton-John growing up, third graders, and listening to all of her fun music. And then, of course,
Yeah.
and all of that. But so we went as adults, to go see her back in 2017. And so that was in the back of my mind. As I walked out of that concert, I heard her sing a song called Somewhere Over the Rainbow that Judy Garland covered. Olivia covered it. It was just the piano and Olivia's voice, and it was absolutely stunning. And I knew that she was sick. And I thought, you know, um, I probably have just seen her perform for the last time live.
Mm.
And in my mind and in my heart, and again, I come back to, listen to your gut, listen to your heart,
Yeah.
the things that push you or nudge you. I had planted a seed in my own brain. I need to do something about that, but I don't know what. As a singer, as a vocalist, as somebody who's admired Olivia all my life, that, maybe there's something there. And so, went on with my life, working at this big corporate job, not so happy about it. It was not really in the, center of who I was. And COVID hits, and all of my musician friends are now unemployed. And so I called up one of them, who was an amazing musician and songwriter and all of these things. I said, Tommy, you've got to help me put this together. So over COVID, it became a way I could pay him. I could feed, I could help him make a little extra money, and feed the dream that I had to try and start something around here. So thus was the Olivia Newton-John
Amazing.
show that was birthed through COVID, through this difficult time in my life that I just needed some ounce of joy. and helping some other people, during a time where they were
Yeah.
unemployed and not able to entertain. So we put the show together over COVID, and literally we're just building tracks and coming up with ideas, and all of my previous experience of producing at Children's Memorial and even at the church I worked at came into play here. And so I look back at how, just the culmination of some of the experiences I had had, it was feeding that artistic side of me at this time. And so started.
Even your MBA and all of the marketing and the things that you looked at as not creative or not helpful have all come into play to help you
100%.
be an incredible marketer and business owner as well as a performer.
Yes, which was something I always, never really identified with, because there I was, in these economics and stats classes, really, going, this is miserable, and thinking, really? So I have to put this to practice now? Like, how am I going to do this? And so I totally was, I was way more leaning towards the artistic person. But yes, that MBA has definitely helped me, and particularly the marketing side, because that's where my emphasis was. And so knowing exactly how I was going to get the designs for my logos done, and exactly how I was going to produce this video, and exactly how, and so it literally felt like all parts of me were somehow now ignited, and I had to move full force forward. And it was and the motivation fully behind it was not, hey, I want to be famous. Hey, I'm a miserable person, and this is just it was really my children. It was like, you're going to have another source of income that can help put these kids through school. Like, that was my sole motivation.
So identifying, hey, I have a skill and I have the ability to do something that will creatively fuel me, but come hell or high water, I've got to figure out how to provide. I think there's so many people that have creative skills and don't have that grit to figure out the marketing side or figure out the business side of it. And I always like to say this to clients that I'm working with. We only do things for two reasons. We do things if we want it enough or we need it enough. And the best intersection is when both of those are present. And in this moment, Annie, for you, your want of needing some new joy, needing some outlet, and your need were really high. And so because of that, I see that propelled you in such an amazing way. How would you describe that for the people that sit in that moment and think, oh, I have this skill or I have this desire, but I don't know, I'm not sure if it can make me any money? What would you say to them?
Well, okay, so a couple things. One, I would say desperation breeds creativity for sure. And so I was financially the greater provider through most of my marriage. And so I'm the one who ended up getting hurt more deeply in terms of the financial. And so here I was just trying to go, okay, it allowed me the window of opportunity to go, okay, how am I going to make this work, and really, really pursue it with everything I had? Because to your point, my motivation was my children, and it wasn't necessarily fame or fortune or any of that. However, one other thing I was going to say was, when I would lay my head at night, in most of my life, I think I've always been, a person of integrity. I've been a person who's tried to live her life as honestly and just, openly as I can. And I think when you lay your head at night and you can say, I have done the best I can do by myself, and in my case, by God and my family, I could literally sleep at night despite how the crazy was going on around me. I could sleep at night. And so even I think those still small voices that nudge you and that gnaw at you, like, I didn't want to live with regret. I didn't want to look back and go, I didn't try my best for my kids. I didn't want to live with regret when I was that kid on college campus that was walking past the art department and just knew I identified with some of these people, but didn't quite know how to get there. Never really giving up on yourself. Right? Like continuing to stay true to those parts of you that gnaw at you at night, and say, hey, if I look back on my life and I don't do this, I will live with, I will not be able to rest. I will not be able to lay my head down at night and feel at peace. And so, am I, on Broadway? No. Do I
Yet.
aspire to that? Well, maybe. I
Yet.
mean, maybe, right? Yet, but there is that part of me that wanted to do something musically. I think back about that child that was 7 years old performing for my grandma, and there was that part of me that had that in me. And, it was fulfilled in so many ways. I mean, I've sung at church and I've sung in front of thousands of people for this or that, but in some ways this was feeding a little bit of that voice that got a little bit shushed when I was a kid in the family system I grew up in. So I had to learn to take these risks and learn to really begin to identify, who am I outside of my family system? Who am I? Who have I been created to be? And how do I begin to really start making those wheels turn in a way that I can make progress towards these things? And it might not be as grandiose as some of the things I've had to pursue because of some of the situations I was in. It might be that there's a hobby that you've wanted to start and you've just ignored it because, oh, I don't have time. Or, I'm just simply saying, pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
And when you lay your head at night and if it bugs you, that's a signal that you need to do something about it.
Absolutely. And I love that line of like, desperation breeds creativity. If any of you are feeling desperate out there, I think that's one of the things that we can tell ourselves, that I'm desperate. It won't work for me. Instead of saying, no, I'm desperate, I've got to figure out a way to make this work. And so allowing that desperation to become fuel instead of allowing it to become failure. And so I really love you've done that. You've allowed that desperation to become your fuel. And then you, like you said, you can lay your head at night, down at night, knowing I did everything I could. I did everything I could as a creative. I did everything I could as a mom. I did everything I could as
save my marriage. I did everything I could.
Yes, to save your marriage. Yes, I did everything I could. And at the end of the day, I'm able to rest knowing that. So there's many of you out there that haven't taken the step to do everything you can. And that is the space where we get to choose, where we have that fork in the road to go, hey, am I willing to take the step of risk? Am I willing to ask for the support? Am I willing to call a coach or call a friend or include other people to help me solve this problem? And for you, you were able to do that. You were able to call so many different people to come in and help you start this incredible idea. And I know we've talked about some fun risks that you were like, oh gosh, this might be too risky for me. So I'm excited to get behind the scenes and hear it. So you're in this, it's the spot where you're like, okay, I've got the desperation. I'm going to start this tribute to Olivia Newton-John. What are the internal voices saying to you, and what are some of those risks that you took to make this come to life?
Yeah. So this is where it gets a little juicy and fun. Okay. So I was literally heading to a mission trip in Tijuana, Mexico, in July 4 years ago. And the night before that trip, I went to go see. So one of the things I've learned to do in my life is when I don't know how to do something, I have to learn from the people that do. I learn from the people that do. And I have a high bar of excellence. And, I guess, again, that's maybe part of my family system. But I went and saw a woman that I knew of, and we were acquaintances, but I did not know her well. And she was a Cher tribute artist from Vegas, but she was from Chicago. She was from Chicago. Her name's Lisa McClowry, and she's absolutely phenomenal. And my good friend, Tom, who was helping me put this tribute together, said, Annie, you need to go see her. She's going to be in Chicago area. And so the night before I was leaving for this mission trip, I literally go and watch Lisa do her thing, and was absolutely in awe, 100% in awe. From the production, from her costumes, she literally was Cher. She looks, sounds, is Cher on stage. I mean, 100%, the whole 9 yards. And here I was going, what am I doing here? How am I going to do this? Because I've
so
pretty much just, stood on stage as myself, singing all of my life. And, this is a whole nother level. And the only acting I've ever had was in high school, pretty much. I was, Ado Annie in Oklahoma. And
What other training did you need?
so, and so, I mean, that was about it. So no offense to my high school. I mean, it just was one of those things, just not the best acting classes. So all that to say is I did not picture myself as a performer. I thought of myself as a vocalist, as a singer. And I think this gets a little interesting because I think when you take a risk, there's a bit of visualization that comes with it.
Absolutely.
Thing beyond
has to happen in order for it to actually become a reality. The visualization has to happen.
Yes. So I had a hard time visualizing myself doing what she was doing in a way that would suit my level of comfort zone, my comfort zone. So I went away on this trip and I'm, nailing boards and I'm thinking all about what I had just experienced. And I came back.
You're singing Cher in your head and thinking.
So I come back and while I was away, I was thinking, okay, these are the things I would need to do to put this thing together. I have to have video. I have to have costumes. I have to have. And so I consulted Lisa and she had me fly out to Vegas. And what was the coolest thing is she introduces me to Bob Mackie's understudy, who she goes, Annie, you can't just walk down Michigan Avenue and pick out a Let's Get Physical costume. Okay. She's like, you cannot do that.
No.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I can't just walk into Nordstrom's and go find hot pink headbands. Maybe I could today, but leg warmers and the Sandy #2 outfit from Greece. You can't do this.
It's not just at the rack.
So I fly to Vegas and she introduces me to her costume designer. And then she introduces me to this person who actually costumed Olivia when Olivia had a show on the Vegas Strip at the Flamingo.
Incredible.
And so here now, all of a sudden, just because I thought, how do I surround myself with people that know how to do it? Now a door is open to, okay, here's practically how you might be able to afford this or to do this well. Then it came to, how am I going to afford it? And so there was the business side of me. And I thought, okay, well, I have so much money from the sale of my home. And that was a risk because I either was going to invest it to my retirement and or try to put it into this show. And I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to try to put some of it into the show. And then I sought an investor, somebody who had known me. And I went and found a small investment and I got a little bit of seed money to help me. And I said, okay, here's how I'm going to pay you back. I'm going to pay you back on, the portion of the proceeds of every show we do, or a portion of the money. I'll pay you back a percentage. So, and I'm still paying him back for that, by the way. But anyway, so I had some seed money. I started to begin the idea of formulating the actual tangibles of building the show. And, the next thing came to, okay, wigs. And that's where I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. No, I'm not doing that.
That was your breaking point. You're like, I can do the costumes, I can do that, but I don't know about wigs.
I had to.
That's so funny that was your breaking point. You're like, I can do the businessman, I can do the dancing, but that was the thing. Like, I don't know if I'm in for that.
It was completely my breaking point. And to the point where when I was in Vegas, Lisa had me audition for Legends in Concert. I had to went and audition for this. And I said, I am not auditioning with a wig. And so, I curled my hair like Sandy, but it didn't pull it off quite as well. And so I came back around and I said, all right, Lisa, you got to teach me how to do this because I know absolutely nothing about this. I am not a performer. I don't even know how to put on makeup well. Like I can do eyelashes maybe, but that's about it. Like, I don't know how to do this. And so therein lies, I had to find somebody, including her, who taught me how to put on stage makeup and how to actually wear a wig, to the point where literally, like, this is how you wear a wig cap. This is, and it was like, this is a football, and it was just so, that was way out of my comfort zone. Okay. Way.
Yes. What was the sticking point for you? Why do you think that was something that you were like, I don't know about this one?
Because, okay, so talk about visualization. I didn't know how to transition from, I'm a pretty authentic person. People who know me, it's like, that's, you know, what you see is what you get kind of person. I'm just very forthright, and what you see is what you get. So to be somebody else when I'm singing, which is how I've largely identified, you know, my skill set, not an actor, not an actress. It was, so I can point to a specific moment. And there I had this wig on. It was my first show backstage. Lisa was my stage manager behind me, working behind the scenes with me that night. And I had to go out there and actually, like, I thought to myself, am I going to be taken seriously? Because all this time I had been somebody who cared very much about, you know, my singing at church or my singing. I wrote my own album and came out with my own Christian, you know, CD with another co-writer, Paul Langford. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? I am going to be so interpreted as a joke. Like, Olivia's passed now. Olivia died. And now people are going to think I'm just a crazy, crazy middle-aged woman trying to live out
So a lot of it, was the fear of opinion.
Oh, heck yes. And, you know, having just gone through that, being a Christian divorced woman, the shame of that, I just didn't know I had it in me. I wasn't sure I had it in me to be perceived as a joke. Somebody who's a you know, an artist, a singer who has been serious about my craft. I just thought, I'm going to be laughed off the stage. People are going to throw tomatoes at me. And so there I was back at the Belfry Theater in Delavan, Wisconsin, ready to go do this concert. It was a December show, so we were doing Olivia and Christmas songs. I had my whole family in the audience. My kneecaps were going up and down because I had this big long 1970s wig on. and I walked out there, and the first two songs I was a nervous wreck, but I got into the groove. And once I was able to do that, I was good. So I had to work through this fear, this absolute fear. I mean, it was frightening. It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And yet it was such a cool thing because so many people came up to me after that and they're like, we are so glad you've done this show. We are such big fans of Olivia's. You know, now that she's passed, you know, we just didn't know how we were going to hear her music live. Thank you so much. And, you know, therein lies sort of the, oh, okay, I wasn't perceived as a crazy fool. And one thing I had told Lisa when I was building this show is I said, Lisa, I need to do this as classy and as excellent as I possibly can because I want to be perceived as legit and thoughtful and, you know, having just thought through all the steps and just done it as excellently as I can. And pretty much that's where it came out. You know, I mean, I'm proud of my team and I'm proud of, I mean, so this was not just me alone. I mean, this took a ton of mentoring by Lisa. This took a ton of, you know, building up by friends and family. Even my kids are like, yep, that's my mom. She's in, you know, the Sandy Leathers and
I love it.
And so, you know, they had to get comfortable with it. It was something that I had to grow into, but it was the visualization of it, the looking ahead, knowing what my goal was, and that it was really about my kids. It wasn't about me being famous. It wasn't about me being, you know, looking just like Olivia, because I'm not. I say I'm 5'6" with 3-inch heels because she was 5'6" and I'm 5'3". And so, you know, I can't possibly look like her. You know, I have, sure, some resemblances, but, and then leaning into my strengths, which was, I knew Olivia, I knew her voice since the age of 7. I know how to sing her music, bringing a great experience for people, and even adding in some benevolence to it, which was a big part of me, right? That fundraising component that I was part of at Children, where I give back, you know, we give a portion of the proceeds of our show to the ONJ Cancer Wellness and Research Center. And both my parents now are gone and they both passed from cancer, and cancer hit my family really hard. And so I can stand there on stage legitimately as myself, you know, advocating for things that are really important to me and representing this woman that was such an influence in my life. And I think all of these experiences everything, my divorce, my struggle early on, of how do I live this creative life, the business side of things, it all had to kind of come together to really, I think, propel me forward. And it was a moment in my life where I kind of had to just figure it out. So.
Yeah. Well, what's amazing and what I hear through all this, Annie, is when you started taking yourself seriously and believing that this was a serious creative endeavor,
Yeah.
you realized everyone else was too. They were taking you seriously too. It was only you doubting yourself that was the loudest voice. Yeah.
100%. I mean, yeah, because it's not every day that you go on stage and pretend to be somebody. I mean, I remember literally my parents going, yeah, there was, this Elvis impersonator. And I thought, oh no, is that what I'm going to be?
Yeah.
That's why I said, no. This has to be done with excellence. And to your point, like, yeah, I mean, I just thought, okay, this thing continues to evolve, by the way. Like, we're working on an acoustic version that's just more stripped down, and it's going to be just me and no wigs, and and that's okay. Like, it continues to evolve, and my children have seen sort of the determination. And what's really neat is now that they're getting older. I mean, this has been going now for 4 years. As they look back, and now my kids are in college. And they're going through their own self-identifying, like, who am I, right? And they grew up in a system, and now they're trying to figure out themselves. And they're seeing, I think, a family member that has gone through some adversity, and I'm hoping that this inspires them.
Yeah. I'm curious, how has this show shifted over the last 4 years? Talked about the different iterations. How do you see it now versus that first show in December when your knees were knocking and you were getting ready to do Olivia and Jingle Bells?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it went from being local to national.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from doing shows right here in Illinois and Wisconsin to now going to Boston and Florida and Washington State. And so we're talking about possibly bringing it to Canada. Wow. And going to be maybe going to Australia in October to do some things there. So to your point, I think when you can take something seriously, and it takes commitment every day. Like, I work a full-time job, during my day, and then I go home and I work on this, and it's a commitment, and I have to stay committed to it. Otherwise it won't move forward,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had to trust other people with aspects of it. I have surrounded myself with people that are phenomenal at their craft. And, so the band members are all amazing, and we are like a family on the road. I have, had to place trust in folks to help me, sell the show, like agents. And in some cases, there's been ups and downs on that. We've had seasons where we've had, years where we've had more shows than others. And, so having to get involved when it's not quite moving at the pace I want it to. And, I think just figuring out, okay, now I have to set new goals and new aspirations. Now that this is off and running, it doesn't just run by itself. I have to continue to keep it moving forward. And that's it's a different mindset a little, because all the initial hard work, the things that I knew how to build. Yeah. I think there's some things that this is a little bit more unknown territory for me. And now I'm having to inquire and ask new people who know new things. And how do you sustain growth? How do you, sustain these things? And so those are some aspects that I don't even quite have figured out yet, but.
Well, and your willingness to continue to reach out and to learn. One of the things that is most important is I've been interviewing so many different people on risk. The things that I hear that so many of them had in common was the willingness to go back and be a beginner at things. No matter what stage of life they were in, they're like, hey, I'm willing to go back and be a beginner. And you've done that over and over, personally and professionally. And your willingness to do that is both inspiring, but also invigorating for yourself too. Like you're showing yourself each and every time your grit is growing because you're willing to do that. And then you're finding success in it.
Well, there's vulnerability in that, right?
Yeah.
There's vulnerability in that. And, speaking about going back and being a beginner, again, back to the personal side, I've been divorced now for 4 years, and I'm just starting to date again. And talk about beginning. I mean, how do you even begin to imagine, what it's like to date in your middle-aged life? And that's an incredibly vulnerable place to be.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, Annie. We got
a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother one. But I'm so proud of you and excited for you.
It's the beginning again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And not forgetting who you are and not doubting those things, and to listen to those still small voices of, yeah, I need to pay attention to this.
Mm-hmm. What are you learning in that the redefining of this season? What are you learning about yourself?
In the most humblest of ways, I think there was a part of me as a 20-something on my college campus, I was not proud of myself because I knew in my gut that there was this artist side of me that was being ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to get in touch with that. And so there's a part of me that I have come to a place of, I'm proud of myself. I'm learning to love myself, right? Learning to love me for who I am and not for who my dad wanted me to be. As the attorney, I'm growing into myself. And so there's a sense of fulfillment in that, and pride, again, not boastful, but just, wow, like I'm doing this hard work to really begin to, probe into these areas that, I knew all along were there, and to actually have the courage. So I would also say I've grown in my courage. I've grown to be more courageous than I was even 4 years ago, to go through hard things and to know, and my friends have certainly helped me do that. I did not do that alone by any means. It took a village to help me get through what I've gone through. And, to now have my daughter see, oh, my mom has shown courage and I can have it too, and that, again, my kids are my primary focus. And for my son to see, wow, my mom can do things on her own and has strength, and that's admirable. That's an admirable quality in a woman, and so I guess that's what I'm learning, is that I need to have courage and belief in myself to know that if I don't know the answer, I can figure it out. I can find a way. I can ask a person. I can seek out counsel. I can find an expert in this or that, and to not give up. To not give up. I mean, I it's funny watching Lisa show so many times. There's a quote that Cher says that, she literally had no work and had 2 children on her own and was a single parent and found a way to reinvent herself to where now she was releasing a #1 hit every decade of her life, and she's 80. And so, and you just go, how do you have the grit to do that? And it's like, her chips were down, and yet she still found a way to do that. Olivia had cancer and still found a way.
3 times. 3 times. And she was still on tour.
Still on tour, and found a way, in pain, in significant pain, to walk out on that stage and do it. And so these are people who've gone before us, and, and I think, okay, this is something to learn from. And I guess that's where I'm at on those things, just having courage.
Well, and being able to see too, that it's not about perfection. Like so much of us, even in the creative world, or when we want to start something, or we want it to look a certain way, or we want to be perceived in that way, the perfection is a myth. There is 0.0% of humans here on earth right now that are perfect. But it's all about the perseverance and the presence. If you can just show up as truly who you are, with all of the imperfections and the striving and the grit and the creativity, and you can keep going, that's when the beauty happens.
Well, it's interesting because it's funny that you say that, because the band that supports me, I mean, they're so excellent. They're so good. They're pros to the hilt. I would say that I've had to throw out the perfection. I'm a person that, I guess some of the, skills I learned through the years of just, okay, you got to have a schedule, you got to stay on point, you got to do these things. And, but yet some of these guys, they've been out there and they don't have clicks and cues in their ears, and they don't have all the things that make everything work just so, and yet they sound amazing. And so in some ways I've had to throw away the perfectionistic tendencies that I have. I bring these to the table, and in some ways it's served me well, but in other ways it's like, yeah, Annie, you've got to throw that out and show up and say, okay, you got to lean. It's a trust thing. It's somewhat of a trust fall, and say,
yeah,
you need to trust these guys that are going to go out on that stage with you to support you. Not, every show is different. Literally every show is different. You walk out on that stage, and some literally, one show, the battery pack to our drummer wasn't working. And so we, so there's things that happen in live performance that it just doesn't always work the way you want it to. And to just say, okay, you know what, this is a new paradigm. You have to learn how to be nimble and shift and flow. And it's when I adjust, as the leader of this team, when I can adjust to those variables in a way that is comforting and supportive rather than angsty. And, it's better. It just comes out better. Everybody can breathe better. And so I am learning.
Well, you're setting the culture for more creativity, more collaboration, rather than setting an expectation of perfection, which wasn't realistic in the first place.
Correct. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm learning to sit back now. I think initially I wanted it to be just so. And I think as I'm allowing myself to breathe through this process and realize, oh yeah, this is organic. This is a little bit organic, right? Like every show is different. And Lisa used to say that to me. I used to say, don't you just freak out and get nervous every time you go out on the stage? She goes, no. I said, well, what's your frame of mind? Like asking good questions. I think yours is really important, but I'm like, what's your frame of mind when you go out there? How do you not freak out? And she's like, she's like, we are bringing them a gift.
Yes.
We're giving them something to receive. And it's an exchange, Annie. It's an exchange. And that's a great way to look at it. This is an exchange. It's a conversation. You're
feeding off their energy too. Yeah. They're a part of the experience.
Right? Yeah. It's organic. Every crowd is different. Every venue is different. And so I'm learning to breathe through this and say, okay, it's okay that it's not exactly, everything I need it to be every time we go out and perform. And so.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go into a lightning round of a few quick questions and then a final question. But I do want to know, before I go into those, what's your favorite song?
Of Olivia's?
Yeah, of Olivia's.
I would say it's tied for first, which is probably a cop-out. I love the song I Honestly Love You. It was a #1 hit in the 70s. Absolutely beautiful song. And studying as somebody who's studied Olivia's life now, I've listened to her biography that came out a couple of years ago. It was really interesting because my mom passed. When my mom passed away just in November, I sang that song over her. And then I listened to Olivia's biography, and it was so interesting because I learned that she did the same thing with her mother. Wow. And it was just so bizarre. I was like, wow. Crazy.
That is crazy.
But that song, it's just absolutely stunning. And it's the song, one of the songs that we do towards the latter part of the show. And then the song Sam. The song Sam is a song that John Farah, Olivia's producer and longtime singer-songwriter, wrote for her. And I named my daughter after it. I named my daughter Samantha after that song. And, of course, when I was a mom, learning that I was going to have a daughter, I was like, oh, I'm going to name her Olivia. Why not? And that year, there were so many people, Olivia, that I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do this. I got to do something else. So I called her Sam. We call her Sam.
I love
So
that.
those two songs are I'm a more of a balladier than anything. Yeah, I mean, there's some really good ones out there though, but
Yeah, there's so many.
yeah.
What's something about Olivia's life that we might not know, but has changed you?
That's excellent. Uh, I would say, so Olivia was, well, it's interesting because, I think I told you, I started my career out in nonprofit hospital work. So I had this philanthropic, benevolent sort of heart to want to bring change. And so when she was diagnosed with cancer and, she became an advocate very early on for breast cancer. And she went and put her name down reluctantly, but encouraged by her mother to go put her name on this center called the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness and Research Center down in Melbourne, Australia, which is where she's from. And she was just such a humanitarian. I mean, she was someone who really deeply cared about people living this journey with cancer. And it's such a plight that so many of us can relate to. And just how hard she worked to bring about the wellness side of things. So making sure that people don't just go through these therapies and, they're losing their hair, but that she cared about art therapy and massage therapy and realized that music was such a part of therapy. And so it was just really, she was very much a healer, so she looked at music as a way to heal and then brought a lot of these other aspects of who she was, into her music, but also into her philanthropic side.
Yeah.
And so I just found it interesting, in some ways my life not intentionally, but has been very parallel, in terms of just sort of the things we've found interest in. I did get to meet her, which was fascinating. I got to meet her twice. And, I just wished I could have sat and talked to her about these things because that would have been really cool to just hear her heart for this cancer center. But
and you've been in contact even with her family since the tribute has been going on. Isn't that true?
Yeah. So I'm going to be going to Australia in October, which is when the wellness walk is happening. And so her niece and her daughter are carrying on the torch for Olivia for this center. And so I'll get a chance to talk with them and meet them. And, Michael Caprio, which was her longtime publicist, is in Vegas. And we had a chance to talk about my show a little bit. And and then I had a chance to work alongside of Dane Bryant, who was Olivia's last music director. He was her piano player when he was playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow at that concert I was at. And we've had a chance to chat and work a little bit together on a few things that might be coming down the road. We worked on a song together, so hopefully that'll come down the road. But we hope to release it later. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Annie, I'm so proud of you. One, just as a friend and seeing the growth in you as an artist, obviously, but as a human. You inspire so many people, and including myself. And so thank you for all of the inspiration. Thank you for taking the risk to start something, even when you thought it was crazy too. And seeing the joy that it's bringing people, seeing the healing that it's bringing people, and seeing the hope and healing that it's brought you too is really amazing. How can people find you? And before we get to the last few questions here, how can people find you, and what's some of their upcoming dates and things that they can come and watch?
Well, and firstly, just thank you so much for having me on your show and your new endeavor. So this is really, really fantastic. Yeah, you can go to alwaysoliviatribute.com. That's our website. And we have a show right in Illinois, in Crystal Lake, Illinois, August 15th, which is just this coming weekend.
Yeah.
We will be at the Taste of Melrose Park in September. And then we head off to Florida in November, and North Carolina. So, yeah.
So exciting. So exciting. Well, a couple extra questions here, but definitely everyone check out the information. Go see Annie. Check her out online too. And if you're someone that's scheduling shows, call her. She has an incredible show and she would love to come and bless the people where you are in whatever city or country that you're in. And so, Annie, here's a couple extra questions here for you. Rapid fire.
Okay.
Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Pizza or burger?
Pizza. I'm Italian.
Jeans or leather?
Jeans. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was going to say upbeat or ballad, but you kind of told us about that already. Ballad.
Yeah, probably ballad. I'm a sucker for a good yacht rock song for sure. Yeah.
Train or airplane?
Airplane.
All right. And the last question that we have here, and I love asking this question for each of the people that come on the show, is what's one risk that you think everyone should take sometime in their life?
Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. I think having a conversation with someone that is on the opposite side of maybe what you believe to be true is a pretty big risk, but I think we could stand to learn a lot if we just allow ourselves to listen and to hear and to try and gain understanding. I think if we can approach each other more lovingly in this world, even though we might vehemently disagree or that we might have a completely opposing side, to actually just allow ourselves to sit and listen is a huge risk, but it could have all kinds of amazing benefit to it, and at least a broader understanding of where someone's coming from.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Annie, for being with us today. And thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for your creativity. Thank you for just what you've shown us personally and professionally about taking risks. We're so glad that you were here today.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Love you, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I'm so proud of you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And if you're listening today and you are at the crossroads of needing to take a risk, you know that you are not living out the dream that you are going to sleep at night still thinking about, or you know that change needs to happen, but you're hesitant because you don't know the strategy on how to get there. I want to let you know that is the crossroads. That is the messy middle that I love sitting in with people. So go to saraemmerson.com and sign up for a coaching consult. I'd love to talk to you about what your next step could be. And until next time, I hope that you start taking risks that make you say, oh, that sounds risky. Bye.